generen propuestas que puedan ser tomadas por Idea Internacional u otras organizaciones que pudieran inspirar a otras organizaciones también a trabajar en estos temas, y estamos haciendo este esfuerzo en 12 ciudades del mundo, en 4 continentes. En América Latina, Lima es la ciudad que participa en este esfuerzo, está Nueva York, y hay otras 10 ciudades que ustedes tienen en su carta de invitación para saber dónde es que se está haciendo este esfuerzo, que esperamos que inspire globalmente a reformas políticas, a cambios en las organizaciones políticas y también, por supuesto, al trabajo de los activistas de sociedad civil en todo el mundo. El grupo que tenemos esta tarde aquí es realmente diverso y yo diría que muy interesante, porque incluye a políticos de muy alto nivel, exministras, exviceministros, excandidatos al Congreso, personas que han trabajado desde la prensa el tema de la política. Tenemos varios periodistas en las mesas de trabajo, tenemos activistas sociales de diversos temas que interesan a la democracia, académicos, jóvenes universitarios, es decir, una diversidad de actores que esperamos que nos acompañen en el proceso de hacer algo por el fortalecimiento de la democracia. Yo no quiero extenderme, quiero presentar a nuestro secretario general, el señor Yves Leterme, para unas palabras de bienvenida, dando además un overview de la publicación.
Gracias, buenas tardes. It's the only sentences in Spanish I will pronounce based on my very great respect for your language. So very sorry not to be able to address you in your own language. On behalf of International ID, and not only Percy Medina is here, who's leading our country program in Peru, but also on behalf of Catalina Uribe, who is one of the authors of the document we will share with you today and tomorrow, and that will be discussed. And also on behalf of Daniel Zovato, who's from the start of International ID in the 20th century. As you can see at his gray hair, he's very experienced in International ID, who was one of the, who since the beginning, one of the most important people in the organization and spreading our work here in the region of Latin America. A couple of words about International ID, very briefly. Intergovernmental organization, not an NGO, which means that the governance is in the hands of currently 30 member states, their representatives. It also means that in terms of the advocacy for democracy and the analysis and assessment, we work on the basis of peer review, but this is not really so to say, externalized, and so this is something typical for International ID. In a domain where lots of NGOs are active, this is a specific characteristic for our organization. Launched 22 years ago, 30 member states in between, global footprint. Also in terms of sizes of democracies, totally different sizes, from Barbados to India, the biggest democracy in the world. Global footprint means from Mongolia to Canada. In this continent, or on this continent, 8 member states. Uruguay, Peru, Mexico, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Chile, Barbados already mentioned, and Costa Rica. I hope I have all 8 of them. So these member states with different stories, histories, traditions, with different dates of accession also to International ID. I think that Peru joined the organization in 2004. They all consist, well, the governance consists of these member states. In terms of substance, we work on 3 main issues, or so to say 4. We are just in the shift from the one strategy to the other, finishing the strategy at the end of the year 2012-2017, and now beginning of December, approving a new strategy where we will have basically 4 domains of activity in terms of the content. Number 1 is electoral assistance. That's why we are called IDEA, the E and the A. Number 2 is constitution building processes. Number 3 is participation and representation refers to all what is in the interface between citizens and public authorities. And last but not least, and this study is a product of these activities, we have a very important work to do also in the future in terms of the assessment of democratic processes. So the DAA part of our work, analysis and assessment, will be increasingly important. So these are roughly spoken electoral assistance, the electoral processes, constitution building, participation and representation, political parties, civil society, and so on. And then number 4, assessment of the quality of democracy. This is basically the 4 domains we are active in. Then in terms of what we exactly do to more than fill our days, so to say, number 1, very important, is the research. Sorry. Something like a third to 40% of our human resources are working on research, producing hundreds of sources of knowledge, experience sharing on a yearly basis, documents, handbooks, but also catering for websites. So this is the first pillar. Second pillar is to be a honest broker in exchange of best practices, bringing together people to exchange experiences, new views, visions, scientific work. And number 3 is the domain of the country programs. So research, convening platform, and then country programs, for instance in Peru, but also in 8 to 10 other countries. When it comes then to this document, first of all say that it's the first, thank you, that it's the first edition which is meant to be a document that will be published every 2 years. We think this is sustainable in terms of the quality, in terms of the resources to be put in. And the idea is that every high-profile international organization that is active in a specific domain should be able, with a sustainable frequency, to set the scene, so to say, and to depict, based on its activities, what a state of play in a domain the organization has the ambition in to be leading. And so I worked for other organizations, the OECD amongst others, the European Union. So these organizations also, with a certain frequency, publish an overview of what's happening in their domain of research and activities and practices. Well, this is the purpose for internationally, to reposition this IGO, this intergovernmental organization, as one of the leading in the debate about the quality of democracy based on scientific, in-depth research. We, of course, do this in quite an already crowded field. We have some spectacular concurrents, but also colleagues, like Freedom House, like the Economist Intelligence Unit, like Bertelsmann's Stiftung, and so on. We have, therefore, been thinking about how we could be complementary, because very important to us is not to duplicate work, not to use taxpayers' money based on which we are financed, through which we are financed, not to use that in just duplicating what other people are doing. And the complementarity we are pursuing by producing this document, the complementarity we are pursuing is to not so much publish, not so much to aim at publishing another ranking, another classification of all countries, which is of course very spectacular. We like to compare and we like to see how our own country is performing, but this work is, to our opinion, already done by the Economist Intelligence Unit, by the Freedom House, and by other institutions. What we thought is, to a certain extent, still lacking, although there are lots of scholars publishing on it, is in a very comprehensive, as complete as possible way to give an overview every 2 years of the global state of democracy. Where are we exactly? Looking a bit further than just the figures, but based on statistics, where stands democracy? What is the state of play of democratic governance all over the globe, from a global point of view, and then focusing on the different regions of the globe, going a bit further even on a country, on a nation base, but not in publishing rankings, although in the thick book you will be able to access, you will see that in the annex of the study itself, we have the statistics. The statistics that are brought together from different sources. A very important source is the so-called VDEM network, a network of lots of scientific and research centers. But besides that, we've brought also our own statistic figures and sources of figures and statistics others than VDEM. In terms of the substance, I think important to refer again to the definition we use when we talk about democracy. So democracy for us is the way to govern a nation, a country, by a public authority that is under the control of the citizens. So the control, the popular control, is essential. And the second part of the definition says that in the exercise of that control, the citizens of the nation or the municipality or whatever concerned should be equal. So popular control and equality in the exercise of that control. Of course, this is not a substantially sufficient, thorough basis to start your research and to have your statistics. And that's the reason why in the study, and I think you have a summary at your disposal, or you will have a summary at your disposal. I think this is also in between published in Spanish. You will see that on one of the first pages, in the introduction, you will see that the definition of democracy, as I phrased it, is kind of translated in what we call 5 crucial attributes. If we talk about democracy as the exercise of public authority under the control of the citizens and equality of the control in the exercise of that control amongst the citizens, we haven't been detailing what kind of characteristics of a regime, of a government, of a way to govern a nation or a municipality or whatever is then characterized. And that's the reason why we decline, so to say, democracy in what we call 5 attributes that are researched in the document. So democracy for us is translated in representative government. So representative, this means through elections, with fair and clean elections, with political parties, free political parties, with inclusive suffrage. The second attribute is that this government is subject to the exercise of public authority, typically in a democracy, is subject to checks, not only the control via, for instance, elections, but also checks by the judiciary, by a parliament that is well functioning, by media. So representative government, checks on the government. 3, fundamental rights. Fundamental rights for citizens means access to justice, means civil liberties, and means equality, social rights, and equality. 4th attribute of democracy is the impartial administration, that typically in a democracy citizens should be equally treated and have equal access also to collective services and to whatever is performed by public authority mandated institutions, be it judiciary or service producing institutions or administrations. So impartial administration, predictable enforcement, and absence of corruption is also researched to underpin the findings, the analysis, the assessments made in the study. Last but not least, the 5th attribute of democracy is an active, dynamic, to our opinion, an active, dynamic participatory engagement. The voter turnout is one of the criteria, but also the civil society participation, direct democracy, the extent to which direct democracy is put at the disposal of people, and also how the subnational level is organized, the degree of democratization or democratic governance at the subnational level. So one definition, 5 attributes that kind of make this definition more precise, and then within these 5 attributes we've checked different aspects, and this is, so to say, the framework we have been researching and where you can find the statistics for in the study. Last but not least, a couple of comments on the content you will discuss this afternoon. 2 main findings related to the fact that we studied the period 70 to 2015. The number one finding and conclusion of all the work is that democracy has been spread, had a fantastic breakthrough, especially in the first part of this 40-year-long period, that it has been challenged since then, and it is still challenged, but that all over the place, globally speaking, more than on average,